A warm welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani, and thanks for joining us wherever you are in the world. We begin in Ukraine, where President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russian forces have completely destroyed the eastern Donbas region. He's also accusing Moscow of carrying out senseless bombardments as it intensifies its offensive. President Zelensky says Russian actions in the Donbas region are a deliberate and criminal attempt to kill as many Ukrainians as possible, adding that it constitutes genocide of the Ukrainian people. Since turning away from Ukraine's capital, Russia is using massed artillery and armor to try to capture more territory in the Donbas, comprised of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, which Moscow claims on behalf of separatists.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Thursday said Russian forces had completely destroyed the eastern Donbas region and accused Moscow of carrying out senseless bombardment as it intensified its offensive. Zelensky said Russian actions in the Donbas region were a deliberate and criminal attempt to kill as many Ukrainians as possible, adding that it constituted a genocide of the Ukrainian people.
The armed forces of Ukraine continue advancing to liberate the Kharkiv region. But in Donbas, the occupiers are trying to exert even more pressure. It is a hell there, and it is not an exaggeration. The brutal and absolutely senseless bombardment of Severodonetsk. There were 12 killed and dozens wounded in just one day. The bombardment and shelling of other cities. Air and missile strikes by the Russian army. All this is not just fighting during the war. Russian strikes on the Chernihiv region, particularly the terrible attack on Desna. The removal of debris is ongoing there, many killed. Constant strikes on the Odessa region, on the cities of central Ukraine. Donbas is completely destroyed.
Over in Mariupol, the commander of Ukraine's Azov regiment says an order had been issued to stop defending the city and save the lives of soldiers at Azovstal plant, the last bastion of Ukrainian resistance against Russian forces in the besieged city.
Glory to Ukraine. 86 days of Mariupol defense. The military high command has given an order to save lives and the health of the garrison's servicemen and to cease defending the city. Regardless of heavy fighting, perimeter defense, and the absence of supplies, we have constantly emphasized the three most important conditions for us: civilians, wounded, and dead.
As Russia continues its bombardments, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said that the Russia and Russia-backed separatists will soon claim full control over the territory of Luhansk region in eastern Ukraine. Shoigu also said that a total of 1,908 combatants have surrendered at the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol. Although Ukrainian officials say efforts are being made to extract the last Ukrainian defendants still believed to be holed up inside. The Kremlin said that the Azovstal defenders would be treated in line with international norms. Some Russian lawmakers have demanded they be tried for war crimes, and one said they should face the death penalty. In the meantime, 21-year-old Vadim Shishimarin, a Russian soldier on trial in Kyiv for war crimes, has again apologized for killing a 62-year-old civilian. Although his lawyer argued that Shishimarin carried out an order from someone of a higher rank and could not have known whether that order was criminal or not, Vadim, in his closing remarks at court on Friday, said he does not deny what he did and he's ready to be punished and face the consequences. A verdict is expected on Monday. And in search of alternatives to Russian gas, Germany turns to Qatar. Both countries have signed a declaration to deepen their energy partnership with a focus on trade in hydrogen and liquefied natural gas. The partnership deal forces regular meetings between authorities from both countries and creates a working group focused on developing trade relations in LNG and hydrogen, as well as one devoted to renewable energy. And as the NATO application roll simmers, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has said he will speak to Finland on Saturday, the 21st of May, while maintaining his opposition to Finnish and Swedish NATO membership bids over their history of hosting members of groups of Ankara deemed terrorists. Finland and Sweden formally applied to join NATO on Wednesday, the 18th of May, following Russia's February 24th invasion of Ukraine. Mr. Erdogan said he had discussed the issue with the Dutch Prime Minister and would also speak to Britain on Saturday. He did not specify the people he would speak to in Finland and Britain.
More developments now for Ukraine. We understand finance ministers from the G7 group of nations have agreed a further $9.5 billion on financial aid for Ukraine, bringing the total commitment to almost $20 billion. They just held a meeting and just finished. The ministers said the support would help Ukraine's government to continue to deliver basic services while it remains under Russian attack. Well, Canada's also snapped new sanctions on Russia. The Canadian government says it's imposing additional sanctions on Russian oligarchs and banning the export and import of targeted luxury goods to and from Russia. Those new measures will put restrictions on 14 individuals, including Russian oligarchs, their family members, and close associates of Russian President Vladimir Putin. In the meantime, President Joe Biden is throwing his support behind Sweden and Finland over their bid to join NATO. On Thursday, he welcomed leaders of both countries to the White House, saying both countries have the full, total and complete backing from his country. Sweden and Finland's bids to join NATO come in response to Russia's war on Ukraine, which sparked security concerns across the region. NATO countries have declared their support for Sweden and Finland, except Turkey, which has cited security concerns. Earlier today, Finnish President Sauli Niinisto said his country is open to discussing Turkey's concerns over its accession application to NATO, and that it is also ready to commit to Ankara's security.
President Biden posed the question to his national security team, to his cabinet principals who cover national security, as to whether they supported the accession of Finland and Sweden, and for them to consider the risks as well as the benefits of bringing Finland and Sweden into the alliance. Unanimously, President Biden's national security team emphatically supported the entry of Finland and Sweden into the NATO alliance on the grounds that they have already proven themselves as highly capable security partners. In the parlance, we say net security contributors, meaning they give a heck of a lot more than they take when it comes to a security partnership or an alliance, and that we believe that Russian aggression has only reinforced the argument for the kind of defensive alliance that NATO presents and poses. And finally, we have the principle of the open door. And the open door says that if countries meet the criteria of NATO membership and display that they can be net contributors to the alliance and to overall European security, they should be admitted. That is a principle that President Biden has believed since long before he occupied the Oval Office. And Finland and Sweden are two cases that are pretty clear-cut when it comes to meeting those terms.
The big story across Europe this week relates to NATO membership bid by Sweden and Finland, buoyed by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. However, their membership is now in doubt after NATO member Turkey signaled it would block their attempts to join. To join NATO, all existing members must agree. The DW's Arthur Sullivan joins us now for more on this. Arthur, Finland and Sweden looked to be all set to join the NATO military alliance, but now there's a problem. Turkey is blocking them. Why is that?
Yeah, so it looked all set to be a done deal, really, when Sweden and Finland announced that they were going to try and join NATO, to apply to join, after, years, in Sweden's case, centuries of military neutrality. But this Turkish opposition has come up very suddenly and unexpectedly, and relates mostly to internal Turkish politics, really, in relation to its relationship with Kurdistan. That's the large region, which part of it is in Turkey, part of it's in Syria, Iraq and Iran. Now, for decades, Turkey has been at war with a militant group that's designated widely by the US and the EU as a terrorist group, the PKK. But the issue really that's arisen is that the Turkish President Erdogan is against Sweden's membership, specifically of NATO, because he says that Sweden has excessively close ties with groups affiliated with this PKK. So he feels that Sweden has not done enough to denounce Kurdish militants, specifically those operating in Syria, the Syrian branch, or a group that's closely tied to the PKK. He wants the Swedish parliament and the Swedish leader to denounce these groups. He also wants some people to be extradited from Sweden to Turkey, who he claims are part of terrorist organizations. And Finland has really been sort of thrown in alongside this issue, with mostly because of opposition to the Swedish position on Kurdistan. So that's the official reasoning for Turkey's opposition.
The Turkish president's ties with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, which is pretty unique. Both leaders are quite the closest, beg your pardon, to any other NATO leader that Russia is close to. But how much is that a factor in Turkey's move to block Sweden's membership of NATO?
That is certainly true. He is closer than most leaders, and indeed there is rumours still of Putin even visiting Turkey. And we've seen that Turkey have played a prominent role in trying to broker peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. However, I don't think that's a major factor here. Turkey has a history of trying to advance its own domestic causes during disagreements with NATO. And one of the speculations around this is actually less to do with Sweden or Russia and more to do with the United States. So 3 years ago, when Turkey's army crossed into the Syrian border to try and push Kurdish militants back, the United States removed Turkey from its F-35 fighter jet program. Now, this is a very advanced fighter jet, which Turkey, along with other NATO members, was involved in producing and indeed acquiring. But Turkey was kicked out of this program because of the United States' opposition to what it had done in Syria. And there's a lot of speculation that Turkey wants to get back into that program, and that this row over Sweden and Finland joining NATO may be a chance for it to negotiate and find its way back into that fighter jet program at a time, obviously, when the NATO alliance wants to be tight and strong. I think Turkey may see an opportunity there, although that is just speculation.
Indeed, and NATO leaders are saying they will have, their own meetings with the Turkish president to convince him on Sweden's membership. But how much of a blow, Arthur, is this to NATO at a time when the alliance needs to show unity in the face of Russia's war in Ukraine?
It's certainly not ideal. As I said at the start, it was widely expected this would be a fairly straightforward process for Sweden and Finland to join. However, it is a blow because the fact that there's now this delay suggests that there may be a problem ultimately in them joining if Turkey does not drop its opposition. And if you look at their geographical location, Finland and Sweden, they're very large countries. Finland has a huge border with Russia. They're both right there in the centre, more or less, of the Baltic Sea. And if things were to escalate in a wider Russian-NATO conflict, indeed, those two countries and those two areas would be pivotably important because of the Baltic Sea area. So certainly NATO would probably like to have them in there as soon as possible. But I would caution that Turkey has had disagreements with NATO before, and in the end there's always been a way found. So if Sweden would accede to some of Erdogan's demands, it may well pave the way for them to be able to join NATO, but it's still a little bit early to say. And if we look at the most recent comments from Erdogan yesterday, on Thursday, he said that delegations from Sweden and Finland may not even bother visiting Ankara to try and convince him otherwise. That's how opposed he was. So let's see, a long way to go before Sweden or Finland are members of NATO.
Thanks again, Arthur, for breaking it down for us. And just for our viewers here in Nigeria, I have breaking news. The Lagos High Court has sentenced to death by hanging a Danish man, Peter Nielsen, accused of killing his Nigerian wife, Zainab, and his 3.5-year-old daughter. A judgment was delivered by Justice Bolanle Okikiolu Igile. The Lagos State government had arraigned the defendant, Peter Nielsen, before the court on a 2-count charge of murder, contrary to Section 223 of the Criminal Laws of Lagos 2015. A state submitted that the defendant, aged 53, killed his Nigerian wife, that's Zainab, a musician also known as Alize, and her daughter on April 5th, 2018, at their Banana Island residence. Nielsen was first arraigned on June 13, 2018. He pleaded not guilty to the 2-count charges of murder, which is punishable under Section 223 of the Criminal Law of Lagos State 2015. Again, a Lagos High Court has sentenced to death by hanging a Danish man, Peter Nielsen, accused of killing his Nigerian wife Zainab and their 3.5-year-old daughter. The judgment was delivered earlier today. Back to the Russian invasion now. A look at the global stock markets. According to the Moscow exchange, both the dollar and euro fell against the Russian ruble on Thursday. Now, as of 11:52 Moscow time, same day, the dollar-ruble exchange rate fell to 61.95. The first time the dollar against the ruble was down below 62 rubles since January 2020. The Moscow Stock Exchange says the euro was also down 3.28% against the ruble at 1 o'clock. Now, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has accused Russia of using food as a weapon in Ukraine by holding the food supply hostage for not just millions of Ukrainians, but also millions around the world who rely on Ukrainian exports. Addressing the United Nations Security Council earlier today, Mr. Blinken appealed to Russia to stop blockading Ukrainian ports. A war in Ukraine has caused global prices for grains, cooking oils, food and fuel fertilizer to soar. Russia and Ukraine together account for nearly a third of global wheat supplies. Ukraine is also a major exporter of corn, barley, sunflower oil and rapeseed. All of them found in Ukraine. And now Russia and Belarus, which has been backing Russia throughout this invasion, accounts for more than 40% of global exports of potash, which is a crop nutrient. As for Russia's UN ambassador Vasily Nebenzia, it is absolutely false that Russia is to blame for global food crisis that have been brewing for several years.
The Russian government seems to believe that using food as a weapon will help accomplish what its invasion has not, to break the spirit of the Ukrainian people. Still, Ukrainians are going to great lengths to feed their own people and to feed the world. Farmers in Ukraine continue to risk their lives to produce wheat and other crops. Many have returned to fields that are filled with mines. They wear bulletproof vests and helmets as they harvest. And, as we've heard already powerfully this morning, it's not only Ukrainians who are suffering. As a result of the Russian government's actions, some 20 million tons of grain sit unused in Ukrainian silos as global food supplies dwindle, prices skyrocket, causing more around the world to experience food insecurity. The Russian Federation claims falsely that the international community's sanctions are to blame for worsening the global food crisis. Sanctions aren't blocking Black Sea ports, trapping ships filled with food, and destroying Ukrainian roads and railways. Russia is. Sanctions are not emptying Ukrainian grain silos and stealing Ukrainian farm equipment. Russia is.